pits about the 12th floor. The first observation of a fire on this floor was on the east face around 2:08 p.m. By around 2:30 p.m. the intense flames originally seen on the face were dying down, while the fire had spread into the southeast corner and as far north as window 12 to 38. The next time that an image showed fire on the 12th floor was just before 3:00 p.m. when flames were observed between windows 1244C and 1245C on the north face. The fire had apparently bypassed the northeast corner of the floor and spread internally to the north side. In less than 15 minutes the fire on the north face spread rapidly to the east to fully engulf the northeast corner of the floor and more slowly to the west, reaching as far as column 47. By around 3:55 p.m. flames had appeared between column 55 and 56. After this time views of windows further to the west were limited. An image taken around 5:00 p.m. showed that the fire had continued spreading west, and intense flames were coming from windows at the northwest corner. And oddly enough, McGrattan about the 12th floor. By 4:45, the fires on floor 12 appeared to have burned out. And McGrattan adds, the fire behavior on floors 11, 12, and 13 followed similar patterns, with a slight offset in time of between 15 to 30 minutes. In general, close to the opened windows the oxygen-guided simulation fits fairly well the observation. There are just some discrepancies. The simulated fires on the lower floors started earlier and burned slower, but towards the east fast enough to reach the white square prior to 4:00 p.m., while on the upper floors the fires started to burn next to the crucial white square and never stopped to burn in that area, and for at least 3 hours 15 workstations generated an upper layer temperature of about 1000 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile the simulated fire consumed 126 workstations on the north side and comparable areas were completely burnt out in about 30 minutes. The crucial area, of about 15 by 15 meters, was designed half the way as core area and half the way as office space. The whole office space was loaded with 20 kilograms of combustible material per square meters representing the workstations. According to McGrattan, the carpet that was assumed to be spread over the entire floor was extended into the core area to represent whatever other combustible objects were to be found there. Insofar the average energy to be released in a half-core half-office space area should be less than in a similar area loaded with workstations. However, in that area the simulated fire burned on for hours. So if the fire behavior on floors 11, 12, and 13 followed similar patterns with a slight offset in time of between 15 to 30 minutes, then the simulation generated about 1000 degrees Celsius for about 2.5 hours on 3 floors simultaneously. Neither the visual evidence nor the descriptions of the fire behavior in the pits chapter confirm a 150 minutes fire raging at 3 floors at the same time. The pits chapter about this picture. In figure 1 to 124 it can be seen that fire had spread at least as far as window 1253C during the roughly 20 minutes between close-up images. At the later time flames are only visible as far east as window 1248D. This indicates that the fires visible earlier had mostly died down. In other words, the last visual evidence for any fire as far east as column 47 at the 12th floor was taken around 3:13 p.m. What's the meaning of that very special area? It's the area right below the east penthouse. And it is the crucial area for the collapse hypothesis as described some years ago in the NIST interim report on WTC7. According to the interim report, one failing column could have initiated an implosion-like total collapse without any resisting element, and insofar the downwards acceleration of the roof must have been near freefall as observed. Chapter 14.6 about uniform high temperatures as collapse initiating component told us. If initiating event components were sufficiently exposed to fire effects to be uniformly heated to elevated temperatures, the steel strength would be reduced below that required to support the load. Uniform steel temperatures of approximately 570 degrees Celsius would result in column failure. And Chapter 14.2 about unbraced columns as initiating component said. The column is not very sensitive to the number of stories of unbraced column length. This column, which had a service load stress of approximately 21 ksi, would be approaching its load carrying capacity for an unsupported length of 4 stories, if it was also subject to a uniform temperature of 500 degrees Celsius. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to explain 4 unbarred stories. So we have to heat up the crucial area around the core columns 80 and 81. How long would it take to heat up these columns? And what's about the fireproofing? Let's have a look at the Prasa chapter. Seemingly 2 simulated fires were ignited on the southeast side of floor 12, and prior to 12:30 p.m. Because at 12:30 p.m., after being exposed to the upper layer temperature generated by the fire on the 12th floor, the simulated steel of the southeast quarter of the 13th floor already reached temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius. According to the NIST interim report, the heated area equals a quarter of a football field. Unfortunately, the SpacePack video taken 1 hour later shows neither fire nor smoke from any floor of the Securities and Exchange Commission. According to the Pits chapter, the first observation of a fire on floor 12 was on the east face around 2:08 p.m. According to the Prasa chapter, at 2:00 p.m. the steel of the lateral bracing near the crucial area already reached a temperature of 275 degrees Celsius. At 2:30 p.m. the simulated horizontal steel beams reached the critical temperature of above 500 degrees Celsius. Pitts found the last visual evidence for flames as far east as column 47 at 3:13 p.m. According to Pitts, at the later time flames are only visible as far east as window 12:48d. This indicates that the fires visible earlier had mostly died down. Nevertheless, the color of the whole simulated lateral bracing inside the crucial area indicates temperatures between 550 and 650 degrees Celsius at least until 5:00 p.m. Let's say, the duration and expansion of the simulated fires on the floors 11, 12, and 13 as well as the fast thermal response of the lateral bracing meet a maximum of the imaginable. Nevertheless, no vertical column reached a critical temperature at any time. Once again, the NIST interim report. If floor systems failed, 1 or more columns may have lost lateral bracing. The column is not very sensitive to the number of stories of unbraced column length. This column, which had a service load stress of approximately 21 ksi, would be approaching its load carrying capacity for an unsupported length of 4 stories, if it was also subject to a uniform temperature of 500 degrees Celsius. According to the Prasa chapter, the columns reached a temperature of about 150 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, a column would be approaching its load carrying capacity for an unsupported length of about 5 stories. In other words, we need at least some kind of inner pancaking collapse, for example of the floors 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10. And we need it prior to the penthouse collapse, to explain the penthouse collapse. Unfortunately, nobody witnessed any dust or fireball emerging from the opened windows of the sec floors 11, 12, and 13.